Gute Woche. We'll try and give over from the Farbrengen of this afternoon. Before we go into the details of the Sikha, the Rebbe spoke again on the importance of instituting new shiurim in Torah, and that everybody has a responsibility to be a Magid Shia, to relate Torah to other Yidden. And this is Saifa men, men to men, women to women, and also shiurim for children. Another inyan which is Nageya LaPoyel and LaMaisa, which the Rebbe spoke about in the Farbrengen, was that we should arrange for Chassidische Farbrengens on every Rish Chodesh. Rish Chodesh is an opportune time for a Chassidische Farbrengen. A Chassidische Farbrengen is to say in Yonim and Torah, and at the same time there's an opportunity for one to express to another one good wishes and brachas, and also when it's during the weekdays, it can be also joined in with the giving of tzedakah. The Rebbe kept on stressing throughout the Farbrengen on the importance of all of these in Yonim. Now let us go back to the Sichos of this afternoon. The Rebbe began the Farbrengen. It is customary lately that we Farbring every Shabbos. And every Shabbos, there's the special inyan of that Shabbos. And talking about this Shabbos which we are in now, it is Shabbos, and it is Rish Chodesh. Bichlal, Shabbos and Rish Chodesh are two opposites. Because Rish Chodesh comes as a result of the moon. Rish Chodesh is the new moon, when the new month begins. And Shabbos comes as a result of the sun. In other words, after every 7 days, after the seventh day is Shabbos. And when Shabbos is on Rish Chodesh, it's a combination of the Shnei HaMa'oros HaGdolim, the two illuminators which HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, that they illuminate the world. Even though, when we go into more detail, one is called Moyer HaKoton, and the other one is called Moyer HaGodel, to the extent that, as it's explained in Kabbalah and Chassidus at length, that the sun and the moon relate one to another in the format of Mashpia Mekabel, until they become totally united. So on this Shabbos, we have a combination of both of the Ma'oros HaGdolim. And together with it, it is also the Rish Chodesh of the month of Tammuz. And the month of Tammuz is a month that to us, Chassidei Chabad, it has a special significance. The fact that this is the month that we celebrate Yud Beis Tammuz, it's the day when the Frierdiker Rebbe was released from prison. So it's an inyan of Geula. And when we're talking about Geula, we usually mean a complete Geula, a Geula that takes the Yid out of all Medidas v'Hagbalas, of all limitations. So, to a degree, this inyan of Geula is yet higher, siphon the inyan of Shabbos, and siphon the inyan of Rish Chodesh, because it's a Geula which supersedes all of these inyan. And together with the fact that today is Rish Chodesh Tammuz, it is also Parshas Korach. And regarding Parshas Korach, there are Heiroes which we can derive from the inyan of Korach. Sai from the Pshutei Shel Mikra, from the Psukim itself, and Sai the way the inyan of Korach is interpreted by Chazal, because when we know Torah, when the Rebbe gave Yidden the Torah, he gave us not only Torah Shebiksav, but he gave us with the interpretation of Torah, which is Torah Shebal Peh, including the Pirush of Rashi, which is on Chumash. And in the inyan of Korach, we see several things. First of all, there's a pasuk in the Chazarah, V'lo yiyech Korach, not to be like Korach, to the extent that there are some poskim that say that this goes into the count of mitzvahs, that we are prohibited to do what Korach did. So we know that we have to stay away from whatever Korach wanted. Furthermore, we find in Rashi right away at the beginning of the Chazarah. Rashi at the beginning of the Chazarah tells us, Korach pikachoya. Korach was smart. What does this show us? Every Yid is really a pikach. Every Yid is really smart. And the Yid has to know his responsibility. When a foolish person does something, nobody looks after him. Doesn't arouse any attention by anybody. However, when a pikach does something, there are immediately people that follow him. And he has to know the responsibility that he carries. There's a famous expression from the Frierdiker Rebbe. Frierdiker Rebbe says that just like we know and we take for granted that each and every one of us has to know our own chesronos, we have to know our own faults. At the same time, we have to know our own advantages. We have to know our pluses. We have to know the values each and every one of us possesses. And be careful that all of these values are utilized properly. And this is what the Hirah which we walk away with from this week's Sedra. Furthermore, the Rebbe continued, even in Korach we find, what did Korach want? So Rashi tells us at the beginning of the Sedra that when the Torah here lists who Korach was a son of, Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kahas ben Levi. However, Yaakov's name is not mentioned. First, in Divrei Hayomim, however, Rashi tells us there it is mentioned ben Yisrael. And as the Rebbe spoke about it already last week, that Rashi is right away telling us the power of tshuva, that the way it's mentioned in Divrei Hayomim, that Korach was able to reach to the level of Yaakov, and not only the level of Yaakov, but the level of Yisrael. That's how he's mentioned in Divrei Hayomim, ben Levi, ben Yisrael. But here in our Sedra, where Yaakov is not mentioned, or Yisrael, but Levi is mentioned. What is the taich of Levi? Levi is the taich v'yilavu elecha v'yisher, to get attached to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That even in Korach, and Korach, we know, wanted Kohen G'dayla, as we spoke about it later in the Farbrengen again. But there was, within Korach, there was also this streak that what was Korach looking for? Korach, with all the wrong that he did, but still there was something within him that pushed him to become attached to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And as we talk and find in Chazal that Korach did tshuva later, and as we say in Tilim, Shir Mizmor Livnei Korach, there's a Shir Mizmor for Bnei Korach. Chazal used the expression Mokoim Nizbatzer Lahem Begehenim, a place was erected in Gehenim for the children of Korach, that they should have an opportunity to do tshuva. And by us, says the Rebbe, taking the lesson from this Sedra, following the Hirahs which Parshas Korach gives us, this in itself adds an elevation to Korach. This in itself helps and assists Korach that he should be able to reach to a yet higher level. Talking about how Korach had the desire to get attached to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rabbi mentioned that truth is that every Yid has tremendous koiches within him. As we say, Yontif, when the Aron Kodesh is open, when we say this special tefillah before the Sefer Torah is taken out, we say V'nocha Olav, Ruach Hashem, Ruach Chochma, Ruach Bina. And we add on this, prior to this, V'yiskayim Banu, Mikra Shekosav, which should be fulfilled in us, the Pasuk that says that should rest upon each and every one. Spirit of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This Pasuk talks about Mashiach. And nonetheless, each and every one of us, when we come to Shulan Yontif, what do we say? The Iskayim Banu, which should be fulfilled in us, this Pasuk. How is it? Because each and every Yid has a spark of Mashiach within him. And we're asking the Rebbe that this spark be awakened within us. And this is said, says the Rebbe, when the Aron Kodesh is open. And as we know that when the Aron Kodesh is open, it's a special time. As it's known in Minik Chabad, that during the entire tefillah of Ne'ilah on Yom Kippur, the Aron Kodesh is open. And for example, when we daven Musaf on Yom Kippur, not during the entire tefillah is the Aron Kodesh open. So we see that when the Aron Kodesh is open, it's a special time. The Rebbe continued in the second Sikha, as we mentioned earlier, that being that it is Rosh Chodesh, he's suggesting that it's an appropriate thing that all over, every Rosh Chodesh, people should gather, come together, and make Chassidische Farbrengen, saying L'chaim, and give brachas one to another. And we know that the Torah is pledged us, Kol HaMevorech Mizborech, everyone that gives a bracha gets a bracha, and the bracha is the bracha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, based on the pasuk that the Rebbe said to Avram Avinu, Va'avocha mevorachecha, I will bless those that bless you. And starting from this Rosh Chodesh, which this is the Rosh Chodesh of the month of the Yule of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and in this Farbrengen, which is in the Beis HaKnesses, and the Beis HaMedrash, and the Beis Maisim Tovim of the Rebbe, this should be continued as well as later on during the day of Shabbos, and Motzei Shabbos, and tomorrow, and to utilize this day. Especially we know what the Ramah writes at the end of Orach Chaim. The Ramah concludes with the words, V'toiv leiv mishte tamid, that somebody good-hearted, toiv leiv mishte tamid, is always festivities. And it is brought that the Ramah completes the Shulchan Aruch with the words V'toiv leiv mishte tamid. And how does he begin with the Shulchan Aruch? Also with a tamid, Shivisi Hashem l'negdi samid, that Hashem is before me at all times. And the Rebbe says it's explained that this refers to the two tamids, to the two kolben tamids which were brought in the Beis HaMikdash. There was a tamid shel shacha, and there was a tamid shel bein ha'amayim, the one that was brought in the morning and the one that was brought in the afternoon, the evenings. And the Ramah stresses at the beginning of a sefer and at the end of a sefer this inyan of tamid, as the Rebbe explained, how he has to know Shivisi Hashem l'negdi samid, that everything that he sees and everything that he comes into contact with is l'negdi, has a shaychus to him and relates to him, and this is something which has to be tamid at all times. And this also comes in conjunction to what was spoken about at previous Farbrengen regarding the Talmidim Harbe, the responsibility of each and every one of us to institute more shiurim and Torah. And if possible, to have 10 participants in the shiur, it's definitely good. But even if this is not possible, as the Rebbe spoke about it last week at lunch, that even when one Yid sits and learns, he's also not alone. He's learning together with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is something which relates side to men, side to women, side to children, as it is known that in the previous generation, the generation of wisdom and a Deir, there was a Gadol b'Yisrael who was not a Chassid. However, he was in a time when Chassidim and Mesnagdim worked hand in hand, and this Gadol wrote a whole shakla v'taya, a whole discussion about the importance of learning Torah for women, especially taking in consideration the Seder which we are beginning to learn this afternoon, to read this afternoon, which is Pashas Chukas, Zois Chukas HaTorah. And it's known how the Frierdiker Rebbe explained that even though there are various categories of mitzvahs are divided into 3 categories, Eidus, Chukim, and Mishpatim. Nonetheless, the Pasuk uses here the expression Zois Chukas HaTorah, that how should our approach be to all the mitzvahs, to Gans Torah. The approach of a Yid has to be with a dedication of chukas. And in what type of a format? Zois. Zois means it's something which we can pinpoint and we see it. We're pointing straight at it. And what do we say? That Zois chukas ha-Torah, that everything has to be in a format of chakika. Chukah maloshen chakika maloshen engraving. That the Torah becomes engraved with a Yid, that it becomes one metzias with him. And especially in these days, when we are within the first 40 days of Matan Torah. First 40 days of Matan Torah, that is when Moshe Rabbeinu still possessed the first set of luchos. The set of luchos, as the Rebbe discussed in Svarim, that the first luchos were engraved by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we will have the Geula. As the expression goes, Achake loi bechol yom sheyavoi. And the Rebbe mentioned today, and he mentioned it also last week, that Achake loi bechol yom sheyavoi can be interpreted 2 ways. Meaning of it is, we are waiting every day for the coming of Mashiach. So it could be taich. We are waiting every day. We are waiting. Every day we are waiting. Mashiach will come whenever he will come. But we are waiting every day. Says the Rebbe, this is not the taich. The taich is, Achake bechol yom sheyavoi. We are waiting every day for the coming of Mashiach, that Mashiach will come today. And especially that we are in these special days, and the first 40 days of Matan Torah. In other words, the days before the luchos were broken. So we will have the luchos as as they were originally, and together with the advantage, with the plus which came on in the second luchos, which is this, that is the advantage of Bala Tshuva. So we will get the luchos in both ways, side with the advantage of Avodas Tzadikim and side with the advantage of Avodas Bala Tshuva. And this will lead to it, that the day of Shiva Asa B'Tammuz, which we have in this month, will no longer be a Tammuz, but on the contrary, it will be converted to a day of Yom Tov and to the day of Simcha, as the Rambam writes regarding Tanaisim. And especially that we are in the days of preparation for Yud Beis and Yud Gimel Tammuz. The Rebbe says that when the Frierdiker Rebbe was arrested, it was on the 15th of Sivan. The question arises, how does it come that in the day of Kaima Siyara Bashlamusa, in other words, that's the day when the moon is at its completeness, Tesvav, in the month of Yachat Lisoy, in the month of Matan Torah, that should be the day when the Frierdiker Rebbe should be arrested. But as we see in the outcome of the events, that his arrest led to it, that in later years, he came here to this country, to Chatzi Kader Atachten, and the institutions that he founded here. And later, not only in Chatzi Kader Atachten, which is the lower half of the world, but he reached out even to the lower of the lower half of the world, and the Rebbe referred to it to Australia, and to other countries, where there too, he founded moistes and he founded institutions for the learning of Torah, for the spreading of Chassidus. And just as we find in this week's Sedra, regarding the whole incident with Korach, that what happened, Porach Matei Aaron, the stick of Aaron blossomed, Vayigmel Shkedim, and what grew, it grew almonds. And why almonds as opposed to all other fruits? So the Alter Rebbe explains in the Likutei Torah that almonds have the tendency that they grow extremely fast, much faster than any other fruit. This also relates to the pasuk Makal Shoyked Ani Roye, a stick of shkedim, a stick of almonds I see, which this relates to the Geula, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will rush the Geula in a way that we will be taken out of Golus immediately. Not only tonight, but even before Mincha, right in the middle of the day today, we will be taken out of Golus, and will no longer be a Golus. As the Rebbe expressed himself, that right away we need the Geula, Pshetlach, Terutzim, and without any postponing. And Mashiach comes right away, and everybody can say what he has learned today, in Chassidus, and what he has learned today in Nigla. Because Nigla we learn right away, at the beginning of the morning we right away learn. In davening we say Zehu Mekoyman. Why do we say Zehu Mekoyman as opposed to any other perek? So it's brought in Sfarim that this is a perek in Mishnayos that has no machlokes in it. That's what. So says the Rebbe, this perek has a special shaychus to Geula, because Geula will be at such a time where there will be no machlokes. And the perek finishes regarding korbanos ein nechel elot tzoli. That how was it eaten? It was eaten roasted. And it's explaining the mother that is classy way of eating foods. This is how the Malachim would eat. They would eat the meat roasted. So it's obvious to say that the Sheir Habar, which will be eating when Mashiach will come, will also be roasted. So here the Rebbe said it with a smile. He says he doesn't know if people ate roasted meat today or not roasted meat today. He's sure that they're those that did not eat roasted meat. And the Rebbe says that he himself and the Yakotten also did not eat roasted meat, and it's not the fault of the people around him, because they do it to satisfy him, and definitely that is kenim nishat, it wouldn't harm anybody. But getting back to the way korbanos were eaten, korbanos, as we say in the Mishnah, V'zeu Mekoyman ein nechel elot tzoli. Rabbi continued in the Farbrengen again about bringing to our attention the importance of instituting new shiurim and Torah. The Rebbe suggested that it would be an appropriate thing that at these shiurim and Torah, at least from time to time, to also learn an Inyan and Rambam. And especially we know that in Rambam we have all halakim of Torah. Every Inyan of Torah we have in Rambam, as it's explained so clearly in Rambam, especially now that we have Svarim that are mafteches, index Svarim that help us find any Inyan in the Rambam. So it definitely makes it much easier. So therefore it would be advisable that in the all these shiur Torah, at least from time to time, also to bring in an Inyan in Limud Rambam. And here the Rebbe brought something, raised the question in Rambam, Take. Rambam writes, famous Rambam, which the Rebbe talks about at many occasions, the Rambam writes that each and every Yid has the ability to reach spiritually to the Madrega of Shevet Levi. And as the Rebbe stressed many times in the Rambam is at the end of the halachas of Shemitah v'Yevlis. The Rebbe stressed many times that the Rambam concludes that he can reach to a level of the Kedusha of Kodesh Kodashim. Says the Rebbe, he can reach to a level of a Kohen Gadol. A Kohen Gadol is the one who is permitted to enter to the Kodesh Kodashim. And when the Rambam discusses this, he brings the pasuk of Ani chelkecha v'nachloscha. Where is this pasuk? This pasuk is in this week's Sedra. In this week's Sedra, where we discuss about Korach, who wanted to reach to the level of a Kohen Gadol, and this is what Korach really wanted. And in this Sedra, where we are told about the wrong of Korach, how he wanted to reach to the level of Kohen Gadol, and everything which we just spoke about earlier, and as spelled out in the Sedra very clearly. It is from a pasuk in this Sedra that the Rambam brings out how each and every Yid can reach to the level of a Kohen Gadol, which is something which requires an explanation. The Rebbe concluded the Farbrengen for those that have submitted mashke for various and happy occasions, shiurim and all other type of occasions, should rise melamata lamaila, as the Rebbe commented. Saida lamata and Saida lamaila are both in the Beis HaKnesses, in the shul of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and they should announce about whatever they're doing. As we know, mitzvah lafarsa moise mitzvahs, and mitzvahs to publicize people that do mitzvahs. Amehem yiru v'chein yasu rabim, many should follow and go in their footsteps of the good things which they are doing. And all these good resolutions should hasten the Geula that we should all go together with Mashiach to Eretz HaKodesh. And Eretz Yisrael is something which belongs only to Yidden. And here the Rebbe says that the new government, which was just recently made in Eretz Yisrael, should be a strong and firm government and not allow for any goyishkeit in Eretz Yisrael, as well as not to allow for goyim to take any part of Eretz Yisrael, because Eretz Yisrael is something which belongs solely to Yidden. And talking on this, the Rebbe says, commented that the United States, as it is known, is a Medina shel Chesed, which gives freedom in all matters of religion, as each and everybody wants it and desires. Getting back to Eretz Yisrael, that the new government in Eretz Yisrael should be a firm one, not to allow for any goyishkeit, as well as not to give up any property to any goyim. And all of this should lead to the Gula Amitis V'Ashleima with the coming of Mashiach.